Hey guys, Rorius here. Welcome to the first in many videos that are going to be coming up on the channel of all the games that were submitted for the Rorius Game Jam 2021. Yay. We ended up with about, I think, 12 submissions for the Game Jam in the end, including my own one. So I thought, since it's manageable, I'll play each and every one of them in a little video, showcasing each one's stuff, including this first video, which I'll do on my own game. This was called Brew. Well, Brew the Perfect Tea was the full title. It's not supposed to be like a semicolon title, it's either called Brew or Brew the Perfect Tea. Whichever one you prefer. Now, I just recorded myself going through all of this a second ago, but my freaking microphone wasn't recording, so we'll do it again. Straight off the bat, this art that I did for the title here, this Brew the Perfect Tea, click to begin. That was the very first thing I did when I started working on this project, which is probably why it is probably my least good art for the whole game, in my opinion at least. Because I was a judge of this competition, I actually already knew what the theme was going in, so I had an immediate head start, of course. That's why my game isn't being like judged along the same lines as other people's games. And mine won't win anything if it if it wins any spots. But I like to believe that for the majority of the art I did on here, I'm pretty proud of it. That scene that we just saw before, where I had like Rorius Presents, you know, a game for the 2021 Rorius Game Jam, that was actually made like way at the end. That was like almost the opposite end of the project development. Yeah, so you click and it makes a little sound effect, and then you're presented with the main screen of the game. So, firstly, I'll just quickly mention that sound effect of me clicking was just literally me into the microphone. Most of the sound effects for like pouring the water and stuff like that were literally me like holding a cup and pouring water in front of the microphone so that, you know, realistic sound effects. But in terms of the music, this music's super simple, but it's because in the very last day of the jam, on the very last day, on the Tuesday, I had to basically teach myself LMMS quickly and then make some music real quick. And I was very lucky to stumble upon this like sound font of this piece that just had like an instrumentation. Oh god, I'm getting blue screened. I was very lucky to come across the sound font rather quickly, thankfully, so I was able to come up with a sound that I liked immediately. All of the art that you're seeing here in this very first screen was all done on the very first day of the jam. On that Wednesday, the first day, Wednesday in my time at least, I did all the art for this intro screen, and I'm pretty proud of the art I've done here, because art is one of my like weakest skills in terms of game development. So I was pretty happy to get something that I was like relatively happy with in terms of all this art. Some of the other art, like there's a couple of pieces that I like, the title, for instance, that I'm not super proud of, but like generally speaking, I'm pretty happy with how everything turned out. Originally, I had planned that you could do these actions in whatever order you wanted. So you could pour the water in first, or you could put the tea bag in first, or you could even put the milk or the sugar in first if you really wished to. But for like technical reasons and just for simplicity, I decided to make it so that you could only do certain tasks at certain times. Just because otherwise, like, trying to cater for all the like eventualities was going to be too much for me. I did all the programming stuff like that, the technical stuff. I did that on day 2. So Wednesday I did all the like art stuff, and on Thursday I did almost all the programming stuff. All the actions in this game are all handled via this little like animation system I built. It's super the system itself is actually quite simple, and it might look, in some areas it might look like super, not complicated, but like messy almost. But because of that foundation I built on the Thursday, the animation system I built, it actually made iterating on stuff later on in the project like way easier. I'll get to that, more to that soon. I've actually accidentally, I'm gonna put the tea bag back in. I'm gonna brew this tea until it's too strong, intentionally. I just want to make it, like, unpalatable for the, there we go, so it's like a super dark tea now. This is now too strong for the person we're serving it to. Let's serve it to them. So, this scene here, this ending scene, and all the ending scenes with the animations, that was all done, like, towards the end of the jam. On Friday of the jam, I only got a little bit of programming stuff done. This is too strong. And then on the Saturday of the jam, oh. That sound effect was made by just me hitting a bunch of keys in LMMS to make this discordant sound. It's funny because I have a little bitty story about that actually. The very first time I put that in, I made the, of course, because it was LMMS, I made that on the very last day of the jam, that sound effect. So I'd been working on the endings for ages by that point. I think I started on the ending stuff on, actually it was Monday. It was 2 days, the second to last day of the jam for me. I spent the whole day working on all the endings, like iterating on all the endings. And the fact that I was able to do all the endings on just the Monday tells you how much ahead of time, I guess, or how useful that foundation, that programmatic foundation I built was. The ending section reused the foundations that I built on Thursday, so I wasn't having to reprogram a whole bunch of stuff, you know? It laid the groundwork for a lot of the stuff in the game, and I was pretty happy with how it turned out. So yeah, I didn't have to do a whole lot of extra programming when it came to the endings. I was mostly focused on the art and like iterating on all the things that can happen. Because we served him too strong tea. You can serve him too weak tea. You can serve him tea with no milk, with too much or too little sugar. You can also serve him tea with poison. So there's lots of different possible outcomes for that ending sequence. And the way that the sequence is determined, and any sequence, all the sequences throughout the game, all the like fade in, fade out animation, is all handled by like what looks a bit like a messy combination of like the same code being read or like written over and over again. But I'll show you that code in a bit because it's simple. It's got an elegance to it, but it kind of looks messy. I'll show you in a bit. I'll show you the code later. So let's make him. Oh wait, this is weak, isn't it? Let's make him tea that actually he likes. Let's make his favorite tea. When you put the tea bag in, you can take it out like any time, but like it has like a little timer in the background that determines how strong the tea is. There are 3 strengths of tea. There are milk equivalents of all 3 of the tea options, the tea strengths. And then of course there's like sugar and stuff like that. But in terms of the art, I had to make milk versions of all the regular teas. So like that first day I was doing a lot of just iterating on different art pieces. That's why it took me all day on Wednesday to do the art. Ah, yeah, me stirring the stirring the tea. Once again, just holding a spoon up with a mug full of water, just stirring in front of the microphone. Yep. Yeah, almost everything was made in LMMS except for the intro, stirring the tea, pouring the liquids. They're real world sound effects. All the rest of the stuff in the game is made in LMMS. Alright, let's serve him his favorite tea. It's the 2nd strength of tea. It's medium strength tea with milk and 2 sugars. Yeah, I didn't mention it before, but I wanted this whole ending sequence to have this like uneasy feeling. There's this like discordant hum under everything. You made it right. I originally was planning to put music here, but I felt like music didn't feel right for the scene. Good. And originally the artwork, all the art stuff was going to be more like whimsical, kind of like making evil tea. Get out of my sight. But once I like made the art, this art I made on, I think it was the Monday of the jam, the like second to last day I made all the ending art. Oh, and then, yeah, just quickly, I'll note that it returns you to the title screen here. I'll talk about that in a second. I'm trying to remember everything I talked about last time. Once I made all the art and stuff, I felt like the vibe was darker than I originally intended. So I wanted the music to reflect that. I wanted the sounds to reflect that. I kept most things very quiet and soundless. But on that last day, I brought in a bunch of sound stuff, but I felt like it all had to be like quite sort of dark. And so, yeah, instead of having music in that ending sequence, you just have like a horrible ambient hum that's just like really unpleasant. Because it's like it's the dark moment, you know? And I think that dark hum was just made with a triple oscillator with only one of the oscillators running, with just I don't know what those waves are called, the waves that look like this. It's just like straight up and down. I think I just put some like extra effects and stuff on top of it, a bit of noise, and so it just had this like ugh sound, which is exactly what I was aiming for. It's super simple, but it is I like to believe it's effective. Now I mentioned before, like when I wanted it so that if you made the tea wrong, if he says make it again, you just get returned straight to the bench with all the stuff still there. But if you get it right, it returns you to the title screen. Because of that decision that I made, originally I was planning to have the bench and the ending be two separate scenes. So it would just like jump to the new scene when it goes to the ending, and then just jump back to the original scene if you're gonna make it again, or if you got it right, or if you do the third ending. But because of a couple of little things, including wanting to have different ways to return to the original scene, it just became frustrating, and so I just ended up scrapping that. I scrapped so much code, by the way. I scrapped so many things. I kept redoing stuff over and over again. I scrapped the idea of just jumping between scenes, and I instead went with having just the scenes right next to each other. There's just two panels, one with the bench and one with the ending. And literally it just like fades, I was gonna say it fades out, and then jumps the camera over here and fades in for the ending. But actually what actually happens is a giant black screen that covers everything, fades in, then the camera moves so that it's still on the black, and then fades out the like black panel. So I like cheated the fading, which is, you know, that's what games do all the time. Games do that shit all the time. Now, I probably missed some important details, but it's not super critical that I mention everything. Let's make him the best tea. Because there's 3 endings to this game. One where you make the tea wrong, which is like there's like too weak, too strong, no milk, too much sugar, too little sugar, are all the possible ways you can fail the tea. His favorite tea is a tea with a strength of 2, or the medium strength tea. There's like weak, regular, and then strong. Medium strength is what he likes. He likes milk in his tea, and he likes 2 sugars in his tea. If you make it any other way, he'll say, "Make it again!" at the end. If, instead, you stumble upon, you're like just sitting here looking at the tea stuff, you stumble upon the secret alternate option. The poison cabinet. There's like a little cabinet that you open up, and there's poison inside. Now, I wanted it to be like a little bit secret, but not like so secret that you couldn't find it. You can return from the poison closet if you don't want to put poison in it. And if you do that, the music will go back to normal. But if while you're in the poison closet, it just plays the same note over and over again, and if you select the poison and you put the poison in the tea, it doesn't change back. You've made your choice, and now you have to live with it. Now, the art that I did for the poison closet, that was done on, I think, Sunday? I think it was like Sunday, the Sunday of the jam. Like, I'll just break down, I think I did this last time, I don't know if I did it this time. I'll break down the days. On the first Wednesday, I did all the art for the bench. Did all the, like, the spoon, the tea bag, the milk, the kettle, the mug, the bench. On the Thursday, the day after, I, like, programmed everything. I kind of did most of the programming, like 80% of the programming on the second day. Made all the things selectable, and I set up the animation system after many iterations of failed systems. Like I tried at least 3 or 4 different systems for animating stuff, and I ended up settling on like this fade in, fade out system where you just basically pass a bunch of animations to the game, to the main like to the fixed update. I'll show all this code in a second, and then it like iterates through all the animations. I set all that up on Thursday, and then Friday I did like a little bit of extra programming. I can't remember exactly what I did on Friday, but I didn't do much. And then Saturday, I kind of accidentally, well, because of reasons I won't get into, ended up like sleeping most of Saturday. So Saturday was like a write-off. I did like nothing on Saturday. So I kind of panicked on Sunday, feeling the need to like suddenly get into gear because there's a whole bunch of stuff I hadn't done. So on Sunday I did the art for the poison closet, the poison bottle itself, the spoon that pours the poison in, which was just the same spoon as the sugar spoon, except with poison in it instead of sugar. And then Monday I did all the ending art, and all the possible iterations of the ending, as well as all the programming to allow the ending to occur. I think I even posted that night, on Monday night I posted that the game was feature complete, because by that point, I had done all the possible endings, I'd done all the art, all that was left was the sound effects and music. And then on Tuesday I taught myself LMMS, I made a bunch of sound effects with physical stuff, and I made a bunch of made like 3 things in LMMS to add in the end. No, 4 things. It was the two versions of the music. The regular music, the poison music, the jump scare, boom, and the discordant like hum under the ending. Anyway, let's get the final ending of the game. We bring him poisoned tea. It doesn't matter what the tea is, as long as it has the poison in it, you get this ending. It's easier to get this ending, technically, than it is to get the perfect tea ending. Except that the perfect tea ending, you get led to it. Yeah, so she puts down the cup, he picks it up, drinks, puts it down, and then he's like, wait, picks it back up to drink more. What is this flavor? It's magnificent. I wanted it to be like he's had the best tea of his life. You know, this poison tastes amazing. It's like your last pleasure before it violently kills him. He just starts coughing. The player character witnesses the coughing, like steps back from the table, and then starts to walk out of the room. This is where you get a little glimpse of the player character, the character you play as. The evil grin. It's definitely I definitely ended up going with more of a vibe of like sort of like a dark, like this is the plan that I had vibe. And yeah, he starts just like, he dies on his seat and blood starts spewing out of him. It pools at his seat. And yeah. And that's where it ends. Now, this is something that I decided to do. I didn't mean to do it initially, but like when I kind of just did it, and I was like, oh, I like that. If you get the failed ending, failed tea, it jumps you back to, as I mentioned, it jumps you back to the bench. If you get the perfect tea, he says like, get out of my sight, and it returns you to the title screen, because that's like, you've finished the game and it's like resetting. But when I initially set this ending up, where you make the poison tea, and he dies, I didn't set it up I didn't have it set up so that it would trigger the same resets as the original. So when I tested it, it just sat here with the discordant hum, the blood on the floor, and nothing else. Otherwise silence. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. So now you just have to like sit here in the vibe of the ending, in this moment. You have to sit with what you've done, basically. Which is I think is really cool. I really liked the way that ends. Anyway, let's look at the code. Okay. So, well, let's just look at the game firstly. So, initially, you'll see here, there's just like panels, like, it's just a 2D game, fully 2D with all like the panels sitting between the camera and the main background. If I go to the ending section here, I'll just turn on the background. There we go. So I just have everything like faded out and I fade things in. I didn't really need to fade out. I have this faded out initially, but I don't know why. I just had it set up like that. So, yeah. The ending is like over here and the camera just jumps over to here to do the ending stuff. And if I jump into the code, go over to the Game Master. Game Master is just full of shit. It's such a poorly written program. It's fine for like a little project like this, but if you were doing a bigger project, you would not want to do it like this. Okay, so let's have a look. This is the Game Master. This is where most of the stuff happens. You pass in a bunch of shit, which is not good for like larger project stuff. You want things to be simpler and intertwined rather than have everything going through one masterclass. Anyway, the actual game, the like animation system is just this. This is like the entire game. Yeah, basically inside the fixed update, so the one that runs like every 50 times a second, it basically determines whether or not you've got something, you're transitioning from some state to another. And all it does is I made this like custom class. Yeah, I made this custom class called Anim. Anim is super simple. It's almost like a struct, except it has like more advanced stuff in it, like sprite renderer. So yeah, by default, Unity doesn't let you set up your own like starter, like your initializer classes or your constructor classes. So I had to like get rid of the Unity stuff, although I see there's still some Unity stuff in here. I had to get the mono behavior stuff out of there so I could set up my own constructor class. So I could have it, so I could pass in new animations. It's just a sprite, a time and a fade, whether it's fading in or fading out. That handled like everything. So all that happens is like when if the game detects that that we're transitioning between things, while you're transitioning, you like can't. I think over here inside the action section, if you're transitioning, you can't do like anything. It cuts off your ability to action anything, which was good. It was really good for like handling people trying to click shit. Because you can't click as soon as something's happening. You can't click on anything. There's this current anims object, which is like, once again, kind of handles everything. You have this set of animations. You have the set of anims and the current anims, and it just for eaches through every single one, determines whether they're fading in or out. Once the time is up, it will remove that anim from the list, from the array. Yeah, it's a list specifically. It made it simpler. And basically, yeah, you fade in and out I set it to be a standard time. Everything fades in and fades out at the exact same time. So it's exactly 1 second of fade in for everything, I think. I actually didn't set it up so that there's like captures in case, let's just say, when I was setting up the music, when I was setting up the audio handler and the audio stuff, I had to set up little extra catches to actually fully mute and fully like louden music, because you can hear music even if it's at volume of 1%. Even if it's at 1% volume, you can still hear it. But thankfully, when you're fading stuff in and out, seemingly most of the time, if something's at 1% opacity, you can't see it. So I didn't bother to even put catches in to make sure you can see or not see things. But yeah, that's basically all it does. Is it like fades something in. Once the time runs out, it like removes that anim. And once there's no more anims, once the anim count is 0, it ends the transitioning phase, and then just other things can happen. Basically, the ending showing thing, it just passes off the work to the ending handler, which is just basically this. It's just this game master again, except with a lot of stuff stripped out of it. Oh, and then of course, if you've got the teabag in the mug, it It just has timer stuff to determine how strong the tea is. So this timer won't tick over while it's transitioning between strengths. Makes it a little bit easier to not accidentally brew it too strong. And then we've got this. The fading was like a last ditch effort to make the reset work properly. And I just have another function down here that just resets the game. Sets everything back to... Yeah, so this is my compromise. Not being able to have the ending be a completely separate scene. I instead opted to completely just reset things. That's right. One of the reasons that I abandoned the scene transition thing is because the master is past all this shit. All this stuff is passed to the master. And if you change a scene, and those objects are destroyed, and then you try and go back to the scene with all those objects in it, the references are lost. So my initial setup of doing it like this, which is bad, by the way, means that I couldn't do the scene transition either. So I had to do all this. I had to like reset everything to the original state. And then it just like, depending on if you're skipping the credits, if you're just going back to the bench, or if you're going back to this title screen, this gets added or not added. So yeah, I have this like master reset, which is just like sets everything back to standard. Then we got the action function or method. This is the other one that's like, this is the messy one, where this one is like this nice, simple if statement with a for each in it, basically. The actual iteration of that looks messy, but it is so useful. So, we basically, I just had like an enum button types, and it just has like all the different kinds of buttons you have in the game. So, blank was just like a default in case something didn't have a function, but acted like a button. We got the title, kettle, teabag. Tea strength is like a unique one that's not actually a button, it's just like a brute force. We got sugar, milk, mug, poison arrow, poison, and reset. The only one that's like a true brute force, like, cover up is tea strength. Purely because I decided that I was gonna have this while the tea bag was in, the tea thing could transition. The way I set it up, I needed a button type pass through to the action. I don't want to rewrite the action, but I wanted the button types to be passed through so I could determine which one it was. So I just was like, oh fuck it. We'll just pretend the button was pressed and pass it tea strength transition. So, but first off, we when you click the title screen, the click to start, it disables the button that is the title. It, in this particular instance, it disables the button like collider, so you can still click the buttons behind it. So one of the things that I did to stop you being able to press buttons in a lot of areas was have just a collider in the front of other colliders, so that you'd hit that collider and not the ones behind it. That's how I handled a lot of stuff. Like, initially when the title screen, if you're clicking in the areas where the mug or the kettle was, like, theoretically you could click, like if you were clicking, but I didn't use like a collider system, or if I made it so that only the click to start thing was the collider, then the rest of the screen still technically had colliders, like, active. So, I decided that I'd completely cover the screen with a big collider, and then just disable it once you click it, so that you can then click other stuff behind it. But because it goes into a transition, once transitioning becomes true, you can no longer click things until the transitioning stops. So this is what I was talking about. This is the, like, looks messy, but it's really nice. Current anims add new anim, new sprite renderer with these sprites in it. Fade in, fade out. No, sorry, the timer, and then fade in, fade out. The initial animation is I pass through the title card sprite and the click to start sprite. Yeah, I made it a sprite renderer array so I can put in as many sprites as I wanted and have them all fade out at the same time, or all fade in at the same time. The only thing I would have changed, I almost went and changed it, but then I decided not to because I didn't need to. I almost went through and changed it so that I could choose for each individual object, for each individual sprite. I was thinking of having a Boolean equivalent for every single one that would tell it whether it's fading in or out, so you could have stuff fade in and out at the same time. I almost modified this to do that, but I ended up not needing to, thankfully. But yeah, so I have these I fade out the title cards basically, and it takes it takes 1 second to fade out, but there's an extra second of like blank where nothing is there. So that's false, so it's fading out. Then the next animation pass through is the mug, the original mug takes 1 second to fade in, which is true, with no buffer between it fading in and the next animation, which is like, theoretically I could have just made it so that if you pass through 0, I should have done that. I should have done that, but oh well, it's done now. I could have made it so that this was just a buffer, because everything takes exactly 1 second to fade in anyway. So I probably should have done a buffer like that. But yeah, anyway, as soon as this fades in, it is followed immediately by all the icons for all the clickable buttons fading in. Those buttons are actually already active as soon as the game starts, but just the visual representation of them, it doesn't. But also, what it must be also said, the button aspect of each of those things is disabled by default. So when I start up, I only need to activate the kettle as a button, as a pressable button. And it plays a little sound effect. Thankfully, because of the way I did the sound effects and the way I did this system, I was able to just inject audio handler play sound effect basically in all the different places where it needs to be. And then there's the shift music function, which just goes between the different musical tracks. All the music tracks are playing all the time, but they're just different volumes. I just did it like that. I did it like the dynamic music style. And then they only take like a fifth of a second to fade between each other. I probably should have made it longer, but I wanted it to be a swift transition. But yeah, so then you got all the different buttons here. You got title, kettle, teabag, which just adds, depending on whether the teabag is in or not, it'll depend on whether you're taking it out or putting it back in. And the mug also is the same. If the teabag is in, clicking the mug just takes the teabag out. But if there's no teabag in it, it will, if the button is still active and there's no teabag in it, that will deliver the tea. But it also depends on how strong it is. If you haven't got the tea to strength 1 yet, the mug will disable, because you can't bring him water. You can't just bring him hot water. He won't accept that. So once you have, yeah. So if the teabag's not in and it's active, it will trigger the ending. Shift the music to the discordant hum, and it will start doing the ending. And here it is. If the teabag is if it's still just water, if it's not strong enough to be even weak tea, then mug disables. Whereas if it's strong enough, it won't disable the mug, and it will activate the milk, sugar, and arrow. So the arrow becomes active once you have some kind of tea. Because I didn't want you putting poison into water either. I wanted it to be I wanted it to be tea first before you did any of those things. Originally, as I said, I was going to allow you to add the milk first or add the sugar first or whatever. But just for this, the way I did it here, it was just way simpler to restrict you to specific actions at certain times. We got the sugar, which just... This is where... The sugar is an example of one of the things that was the reason that I needed this animation system. Was that I wanted the spoon to spawn in with the sugar above it, and then to have the stirring spoon, and then to go away. If I just had, like, one thing happening each time, I wouldn't have needed this, like, anim system. But having, like, multiple steps, and the ending... This is the... Okay, yeah, let's just jump over to the ending real quick. This is the ending animation system. All the different things that can happen. This is why I set it up the way I did. Because I wanted to be able to mix and match animations and determine what outcome you'd get from like your stats that then gets turned into animations. This is the stuff that always plays every single time. And then if you've got poison in the tea, this happens. It's the longest animation sequence. If instead there's something wrong with it, your failed equals true in all these instances. And a simple animation plays through. Once that animation finishes, when the ending is playing, and this animation system is going through, when the animation system ends, that's when it checks. I think it has its own... Yeah, see, it has the exact same little engine of, like, playing animations, just like the Game Master. But then once it finishes animating, it will set itself, it's finished to true, and on the next pass, it will determine what is going to happen, basically. If you failed to make the tea properly, it'll activate the make it again and play the, like, bling. Yeah, and so it activates the button that you can then click to reset. But if you did it right, if you got the right option, it'll do this, it'll start the fade out, which leads to resetting the game, and resetting it with, I think false means it's not going to skip the credits, so it's going to show the credits again. This here was why when I made the poison ending, it didn't end, it just sat on the ending, because I didn't have like an else if poisoned, you know? And when I did that, I realized how effective that was. I was like, oh, perfect, I don't have to write any code for that, I can just leave it as it is. And yeah, if you get the mix right, there's a few extra animations at play. It's all just text stuff. But yeah, when it comes to the poisoned, it's text, it's the hand, more text, player movement, and text, player movement, text, yeah, and then blood. Oh, and I basically also added a little buffer, which doesn't do anything. I passed it a sprite, but it doesn't actually do anything because the sprite is already rendered in. I just passed this in as like a buffer between when the character says you've done something bad before it shows the make it again, because I wanted there to be a bit of a gap so that you're in one of the keys to like jump scares and stuff like that. And to add atmosphere is to add pauses. So having this pause here just adds a little bit extra atmosphere. And then yeah, this also has its own little reset system, which basically sets everything in the ending system to false, sets it back to default state, and then fades all of its shit out. And it passes this fade. This, despite the fact that it's another anim and it could be handled by the ending handler, I passed it through to the master so that it wasn't going to clash with other animations happening. Yeah. So yeah, I think we've covered everything that I need to cover. I've been recording way too long for this episode. Definitely the fade out system and reset game, or the fade out system especially, is probably one of the messier things that I programmed. Everything in here is actually it looks messy, but it's quite logical. It's all just activating and deactivating stuff, like the poison closet. If you actually click on the poison bottle, it like deactivates all the poison stuff because you can no longer go back to the cupboard. It adds all these animations for the poison spoon. So yeah, it's like the poison cupboard fades out, the poison spoon and the poison in the spoon fades in. Yeah, the spoon is its own thing. The poison is just like a little extra detail on the spoon. That like fades in. The poison in the mug fades in. The spoon with the poison fades out. Stir spoon fades in and then fades out. And yeah, suddenly poison. You disable the button, the poison button and the arrow so that you can no longer go back to the cupboard and play the sound effect that is the stirring. I had to make a separate stirring sound effect for the poison so that it was correctly meted out in terms of time. And I did that by recording the game for, you know, I just recorded myself playing my own game with the spacing. I brute forced it. That's what I'm saying. I have like a literal dead space at the start of the sound effect so that once the spoon's actually stirring, that's when the sound plays. But yeah, I don't think there's really anything else I want to show off. There's the text wiggle that I did for the like make it again thing, which just has 3 sprites. I just literally brute forced it. It has three sprites and it changes back and forth between the 3 like aggressively. The credits, like the things that show up at the start that just immediately fade out and disappear, I had them set up so that they would have like, I could reset them. Originally they would just do it all themselves, but then I had to, and they would delete themselves, but then because of the fact that I needed to reset them, I stopped them from deleting themselves, made them just disable themselves. And yeah, so they game object set active false, and then they can, once you enable them, they reset themselves partially, but then you can also pass it extra time if you need extra time. And I did. I did need them to have extra time. And they had varying amounts of extra time, so I'm glad I set it up the way I did. Button types enum, buttons themselves. So they each button has like a highlight sprite that will appear and disappear as you hover over it. I had to redo this a bunch of times because highlights would stay on things when the transitioning stuff would start. So I had to make a bunch of things that would make it so that it would disable itself once transitioning starts. So it has to constantly reference the master. The anim itself. Oh, I already showed this. Yeah. Anims are super simple. So the code was actually super simple for this, relatively speaking. It was just the complication of trying to figure out how to utilize all the things I had. And it was the complication of the millions of sprites and how to pass them through. I could have had it all happen programmatically, and therefore not have that issue of, like, the links to things. But, you know, when you're making a small Unity game, just, like, screw it. Just pass it through via here. And I had everything public so that I could test it and see it. So if I actually play it, and yeah, there we go. You can like see them all activate and deactivate. See the thing disappears, brew disappears, mug fades in, the other things fade in. These are all hovering above things because that's how I did the depth. Yeah, see, while I'm hovering, nothing. The water hovering above it. The highlights are all like way above what they're actually sitting on top of, purely so that I could have highlights for. I'll show you. So I could have highlights working with. Oh, there's the tea bag thing. Yeah. Take it out. I had the highlights so far above everything else, so that when you go to the poison closet, it could still have the highlights. Like you could still. Actually, no, I had the highlights on the separate layer. Never mind. So yeah, big fader fades everything out. Jump the camera over to here, fade everything back in. Have the player walk towards the ending. So everything's still here. I should have done one of the other options, because when you do the poison one, it doesn't reset. Wait, let's reset. Let's make some bad tea. Yeah, here's the timer, counting away. Just like, iterates through timer there. And here I could just like, it won't update it automatically, but if I wanted, for testing purposes, I would just like activate milk, set the sugars to like 2, oopsies, and then do whatever, you know, I do whatever I want here, so I could just trigger endings and stuff like that. But that won't reflect visually because of the way the animation system works. Let's just deliver that tea. It's not strong enough. So we'll get the reset show up. Things that don't clash each other, I had them on the same layer. This is too weak. Yeah, it'll pop up with the make it again up here. There we go. See, it's like hovering above. And if I select the, see, there's the trigger, the like collider that allows you to press it. Does not activate until the make it again pops up. Fader fades back everything back out, and then jumps back to the start, and it has everything reset. All the like sprites and shit that were here all disappear, and it resets the game. So yeah, that was Brew. This video was way too long. I gotta cut it down. But yeah, that was my process. That was my development process. It's a simple game. Took me a while to do, but it was a simple game. Actually, it didn't take me that long. It's a simple game made quickly, and thankfully, people seem to like the art that I did. So I'm happy that I made the effort, because part of my reasoning for doing this, the way I did, is that I wanted to once again prove to myself that I'm capable of making an entire game myself. And this time I did, like last time I did that, I made the game Pip, which was not particularly interesting or fun. But even in that game, I acquired music. I actually paid for a license for music for that game. So I didn't make it entirely myself. Even though I still felt like I proved it, I didn't actually make the music myself. This time, I literally made everything. Other than Unity itself, and the sound font I used, which is just like the sound fonts are basically just like packs of instruments. And then you use them however you wish to use them. Yeah, if you make music yourself, you'll understand what I mean when I say sound fonts, probably. Just one last thing before we go. I will say, I chose this this resolution, because it's the resolution that PS1 games render at. It's 640 by 480 is apparently PS1's rendering scale. And I made all my scenes. I wanted it to be pixel art. I wanted it to be low res. So what I did is I took that resolution, which was I felt was too high for. I didn't want it to be any smaller in terms of the box you play in, but I wanted the actual graphics to be smaller. So I basically like dropped this resolution down. I scaled this resolution down. It was like 140 by 120 or something like that. Some number like that was the resolution I used for the screen, for the actual pixels. And I made everything in the same scale, so everything just sits at 0 in this area here. So if I go into like the poison cupboard, it's all 0, 0. Because if I go to the credits, it's just like one big box. You see, it's just exactly the resolution of the screen, and yeah, it just worked. It worked well for the scale. And see, I put a box glide around this so that you couldn't click on the title before the credits fade away. And there's actually 2 credits here. There's a credits that's just got nothing on it, that lasts just a little bit longer than the regular credits, so that when the credits fade out, they won't immediately fade to the brew screen, so you won't have like clashing stuff. It fades to black and then to the title. It's okay. Enough about this. I mean, I could talk about this for. I literally talked about this for an hour. If you like what you saw, hit like. If you want to see more from me, then subscribe. If you like the game, go give it a play. I'll link it in the description. But this is just the first episode of many episodes I'm going to do on different people's games. I'm going to play all the games. I'm going to rate all the games. But while I won't rate them on the camera. I'll rate them in my own time. But I will play all of them, and all of those episodes will be much shorter than this one, because I won't be going through the development stuff. I'll just be trying out the game myself. So I hope you guys look forward to seeing that. I look forward to seeing your games. Check the links in the description, the download link, as well as the my merchandise stores, my merchandise store, social media pages, and Patreon and donation links and stuff like that. All the stuff down there. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next episode of the Rorius Game Jam Showcase.